Welcome, everyone. The topic today is shadows standing in the light. It sounds a little vague, perhaps, but it is important for you to understand this concept. But before I begin, I want to, giving you the phone number doesn't work because it's pre-taped, but I want to give you my email address, janet@higherselfvoice.com or janet@janetrichmond.com. Either way, I'm going to get the email. Please send me requests for healing, send me requests for questions. You want to expand your understanding of something, or maybe suggestions of what a topic you'd like me to talk about. Remember, we are in Superhero School. We are all going to be learning about various tools, techniques, concepts, viewpoints, ideas that we can be using to help ourselves. We are first going to be using all of this information on ourselves because, as the higher selves often say, if you want to save someone who's drowning, you have to know how to swim. So it's important that we first do it for ourselves. Then not only can we role model, but we will have the experience behind us, the understanding, the knowledge to be even so much more helpful to others that we are reaching out to be superheroes for. So again, welcome everybody to Superhero School. And the higher selves are the source of the information that I'm giving you. And I hope that you will listen, and if you have any questions, let me know, janet@higherselfvoice.com, or just utilize the information. It's important, as the higher self has explained, that we make the commitment to the self. It's one thing to listen and hear the information, but it is important also to use it, to make that commitment. Just like if we decide to go get in shape, and I use this analogy all the time, but we make the commitment. We're going to sign up. We're going to pay money down to go to the gym. We want to get in physical shape, and paying the money helps motivate us to keep to that focus, to keep motivated, to stay on track to bring ourselves into better physical health. It's the same way for this kind of work. Let's motivate, let's commit, and all along the way, the things that I'll be bringing to you all are things that have helped me so immensely in my life. I can't even begin to tell you. It's helped tremendous amount of people make changes in their life. So we're being superheroes for ourselves first. We get the benefit. It's not like we have to sacrifice ourselves in order to finally get to the place where we can help others. We aren't doing any sacrificing at all. In fact, we're honoring ourselves by making that self-commitment. We are bringing the focus of attention to what we can bring to the table, all that we carry, the gifts and talents, and so much more. And that's one of the things I'm going to get into today through the topic of shadows standing in the light. Okay, so let's just begin. What do I mean by shadows? Now, the higher selves say that shadows are cast by anything that stands in the light and prevents the light from fulfilling at its highest expansion. So, in the evolutionary vibration, which is basically where we all are, where each soul moves and lives and has their beingness, there are many shadows that stand in the light of the soul, and thereby prevent the soul from perceiving at the highest level its own purity, its own light, its own ability, etc., etc. Now, that's just a general thing. I'm going to be explaining all of that. We all know, I'm pretty sure, that darkness can never put out the light, because no matter what the smallest bit of light there is, there's light. Darkness can't put that light out. But there are shadows within the light, and these shadows, again, can prevent an individual from expanding, from moving into its higher and higher levels of awareness and consciousness. So, but it doesn't mean, let me be clear, it doesn't mean we are going to be prevented for all time. It means simply that the shadows prevent us from moving as quickly and as easily as we would if we were attuned to the idea that these are only shadows and they can be removed. They don't have substance. They might seem like they have substance. They might seem like they are impassable or unsurmountable, or however you would perceive a shadow. But in fact, they can be removed. So today we're working to attune ourselves to understand shadows a little better, and to understand that yes, we come very well equipped to handle the shadows in our lives. Okay, now let me give you some examples. Okay, so shadows are anything that stands between us and the purity at the knowing level within us. In other words, stand between us and our knowing of the purity. We carry the purity no matter what. Okay, we carry the purity and perfection of that pure soul essence no matter what, but the shadow stands between our being aware and living out of that place of the purity and knowing of the purity. So it is a shadow because it doesn't allow us to clearly see on the inner level or clearly perceive that higher, most perfect, purest point of power that we carry, okay? Now, the shadows can come in a lot of guises, and this is important for you to understand. A teacher, whether it is a teacher from the incarnate level or the disincarnate level, in other words, whether it's a teacher here in body that we turn to or we're learning from, or whether it's a teacher that comes to us like a master teacher or guide or the higher selves, any kind of teacher can eventually become a shadow, okay? So what happens is we meet these teachers along our path. As we unfold, we meet the teachers, and the teachers are the light often in the moment of contact, all right? So we get drawn to, we resonate to the information, the ideas, the concepts that they bring to us, okay? Now, in that case, these teachers are not shadows in the light. When can they become shadows? All right, this is important. They become shadows in the light if the individuals, any of us, all of us, we've all done this. It's not unusual. This is part of what we've done. When we lock in and make the teacher's power and authority more important than our own light. When we lock into that somebody else, something else, is more important than our own light that we're carrying, okay? Another type of shadow is truth. Now, how can truth be a shadow, you're asking yourself, and you're thinking, haven't we always strived to understand the truth and live by the truth? Well, the fact of the matter is, when we lock into a truth, any philosophy, any concept or idea, we give over the ability or the power to expand past where that truth is at that moment in time. That truth becomes a boundary between belief, where our belief happens to be right now, and the next level of expansion. Now, to explain that a little more, I think I've explained, I do it a fair amount, so probably some of you will have heard this, that truth, there is no the truth. Often, at first, Joan Culpepper, who I learned from, told us that she used to think it was my truth, your truth, and the truth. And then when the higher self information began to come through, and she understood things from a different perspective, she and the higher selves started to explain that it is my truth, your truth, and the ever-expanding truth, because truth never stops expanding. There is no the truth. So when we have a belief system, wherever we believe, whatever truth we are focused on, have locked into, actually is the boundary, which is as far as we can expand. It limits us. It's a limited vibration, the higher selves would say. okay? And those truths then, we give over the authority in our life to those truths instead of where the true authority is, which is within, okay? Now, another type of shadow is to give over the power or the responsibility for our life to something outside of ourselves. So if we place anybody on a pedestal or something on a pedestal that we see as being higher than we are, then we're allowing what's on that pedestal to become a shadow in our own light. Okay? Shadows can be played out in the emotional realm, okay? Fears, for example, create shadows in the light. Any kind of emotionalizing takes our focus of attention off our light, off our pure soul essence, and stands as a shadow, and therefore doesn't allow us to be fully expressive and expansive in our own true nature. Okay, so it is important for each of us to recognize, become aware we have shadows, to recognize them. Why? Because we don't want shadows in our light anymore. It's to allow us to get rid of them, to dissolve them, to have them prevent us from truly recognizing and living out of the light that we are. So, it's hard. It's not easy, but it becomes something that more and more we will be paying attention to. I bring these kind of concepts back in different ways over the course of the shows, and will continue to do so over this next year. But it's important to become aware of the shadows that are standing in our light and the thing that's casting the shadows. It is us choosing to allow the thing, the person, the concept, the idea, the truth to cast the shadows. Nobody is forcing us to do it. Nobody is standing over us with a gun to our head saying, you have to believe this truth. You have to accept this person as responsible, or this thing, or this God as responsible for you, responsible for saving you, and putting, and forcing us to put that, whatever it is, on a pedestal. There is nothing forcing us. We choose the shadows. Yes, we are choosing the shadows, and that's why we need to be aware that we're choosing them. This doesn't happen consciously, you guys. This doesn't happen because we're idiots. It doesn't happen because, that's what we want to have happen. That's not our intention. It's part of the human condition, part of the automatic pilot system that we have spent so many eons of lives attaining, growing, enhancing, and becoming attached to, that are creating these shadows. It's us. So we're responsible for understanding what we have put in our lives that are shadows, and instead to pull our focus back into the pure soul essence. And I'm going to get into this in a little bit. Because where the shadows that we're putting our focus of attention on are the things that are manifesting in our outer reality. Okay? So, for example, people that we know, that we love, and we respect can become shadows. People that we don't love, don't respect, can also become shadows. Whenever we take the focus of attention off the purity of our own light, those people can become shadows. Now, the ones you love and care about become shadows simply because they are, if our focus of attention is on them and we are putting them ahead of ourselves in whatever way, we are making them the more important thing in our life rather than the pure soul essence. they are creating a shadow. Now, of course, we have little kids, we have to pay attention to them, and this is not a diatribe on, becoming self-absorbed individuals. It's not that, and I'm going to be explaining it a little bit. But whenever we see our outward focus of attention taking over and pulling our outward focus of attention on something that is pulling away our focus on the inner light that we carry, those can be shadows. And of course, the people we don't care about, we don't like, we don't respect, they can be shadows too, because they are creating perhaps deep emotions. They're triggering off things that we hold inside that are taking our focus of attention away. Now, we can even become shadows in someone else's life. Okay? I know that's hard to hear, but of course that's so. One main area where we can become a shadow in someone else's life is when we attempt to do something for the individual. For example, let's say we try to teach somebody something, but instead of teaching, we utilize that situation as a way to hold on, as a way to protect, as a way to become responsible for someone. In this way, we can be a shadow for others because we're pulling their focus of attention, not on purpose. This is not about purposeful intention. This is simply because we haven't been aware of this kind of concept, perhaps. We just have gone through so many lives where that's been our job, taking care of other people, being responsible for others. And the boundary between being responsible when it's needed and necessary for children, disabled, elderly, etc., the boundary gets very iffy in life, often, and confused, and we can step over the boundary and become responsible for individuals or try to hold on, try to protect, try to make decisions for them or force our viewpoints on them, whatever it may be, again, often with very good intentions or out of a sense of fear or whatever, it's a shadow in their light. Now, we're a shadow. We're creating a shadow in our own light too, because guess what? We're now focusing outward. We're now taking away the focus of attention on our own inner light. It's a two-way street here. So, bottom line, no matter what the situation, what the condition, what is the shadow, who is the shadow, we want to become aware that this shadow is taking away our full awareness of the purity and perfection of who we are. Okay? Now, this isn't to indicate, and I know it might sound this way, and you know me, but it never is this way. This is not to indicate that anyone is doing anything wrong. This is about looking at an idea and a concept that the higher selves have given us that makes sense. There's some logic here. It is an idea to mull around and think about, and just you can't have choice about how you're going to perceive things. You can't shift viewpoints and things unless you have other options. So that's what this information is about, to bring you an understanding of shadows in the light, bring you an understanding that this is something that would be helpful for us to look at. Because when we have shadows in our light, it prevents us from seeing things clearly. It holds us back. Once we understand and become more and more aware of the shadows that we're carrying, that we are allowing in our life, we will, and I will going to be explaining this in just a bit, we will be able to rid ourselves of those shadows. Not rid ourselves of the people. It's not about that. We're going to rid ourselves of the place that person takes, or not takes, because that person isn't doing anything that we allow that person to take in our life. maybe it's an authority figure. They're more important. What they have to say is more important than my own inner knowledge, my own inner purity and wisdom, etc., etc. If we become aware, then we can dissolve our attachment to making that person, that idea, that concept, that philosophy, that spiritual belief system. The more we become aware of it, the more we can then create a situation, do the process, which I'm about to tell you, and it's so easy, to clear away our attachments to the shadows that we allow in our lives. Because we allow them. Nobody, as I said, nobody forces them to be shadows in our lives. Remember, every event, every single thing is actually neutral. So if there's something in your life that you see, oh my gosh, that's creating a shadow. I've sort of hung my hat on that teacher for 15 years, and I've just locked into that philosophy, and I'm just giving a random example. I've locked into that philosophy. Gee, could that be a shadow in my life? Yeah, it absolutely could be. It was brilliant, absolutely inspirational information and knowledge and wisdom when you first met that teacher or that philosophy. But over time, if we've locked into something, it creates the shadow. So when we do the exercise, which I'm about to explain, it's not about saying that philosophy is bad. It's not about saying the person teaching the philosophy is bad. It's not about saying anything about the external reality. It's about addressing that it is pulling us, we've allowed it to pull us off our own internal focus. I think you guys get what I'm saying. Sometimes I can repeat myself to the nth degree, and I do apologize for that, but it's so important that you understand this isn't about criticism of anything in your outer reality. The philosophy, the person, the anything. There is no criticism of any of that. There's no criticism of the self. Nobody is doing anything wrong. It's in our own evolutionary journey. We have taken on misunderstandings, misconceptions, and have had a dearth of higher level concepts that we now have on this planet, and I've explained that to you many times, that bring in the expanded level of understanding of how different ways we can look at these things. So instead of attacking the shadow, oh, that person's so terrible and so mean or so this or so that, instead of attacking the shadow, we can understand the person has their own evolutionary issues and has gone through their own journey, and they've triggered stuff off for us that have created shadows in our own life. They keep us in a state of anxiety, maybe. They keep us in a state of fear. They keep us in a state of worry or shame or whatever it is. They're not doing it on purpose. They're triggering us, and so we attach to those emotions, for example. We attach to those emotions. We attach them to the individual in our life. But those are literally shadows. That individual is actually neutral. It's how we respond to that individual, an event, anything. So I'm kind of jumping around here, and I'm sorry about that. But I think you guys understand that even with a little asides, even a little jumping around, it is not about condemning anything in our outer reality. And it's certainly also not about condemning ourselves. Okay? What we're doing now, remember, guys, we're superheroes in training. We're trying to understand and connect more with who we truly are. So, if we can focus our attention more consciously and more directly on the pure soul essence, again, this is the light of our highest expression and our highest expansion. The shadows, which play themselves out in all these different ways that I've mentioned, through emotional schisms, through fear patterns or sorrows or truths or philosophies, etc., 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 those things, the shadows, take our focus off the light. If we focus more on so it takes the focus off our light, and they therefore become shadows in our light. They cast their shadow. So it means when we do that that all-powerful, that purest, most perfect, most potent point of power that you hear me say over and over and over again is not usable in its purity in our outer reality. We can't use it in its purity. We can't touch it in its purity. So, this is not about having all of you become completely and totally introverted, focusing constantly on the pure soul essence and ignoring the outer world. We can't do that. We live in the outer world, guys. That is not what is being advocated here. It's just, that's not possible. We live in the world. But once we understand this concept of shadows and we deal with them, we more and more closely will be able to manifest more and more of the purity of the light in our outer reality. Because we'll be standing more and more within the light. Okay, how do we do that? Well, before I get to that, one other thing. And this goes beyond without saying, I'm talking to the choir here. You guys know that we aren't really helping ourselves when we fall into the habit of worry or trying to do for other people what they should be doing for themselves, or holding on to various truths in whatever fashion or whatever philosophy. Because I'll tell you why we don't do ourselves. It's a disservice to ourselves. We're not doing ourselves any good, because in the light, in that pure soul essence, again, and I've talked about this back in the beginning of this year, in that light we carry the power of the miraculous. And this brings us back to this whole superhero idea. It is that light that carries the power of miraculous. But not if we're not connecting to it in its purity and in its potential and its incredibleness. I don't know, whatever you want to say. As we focus more and more on the light, we become more and more accustomed to this light, to the power it carries. And the light itself then becomes our greatest transformer. Not only for ourselves, but for our reality and for others. This light can transform. It's so huge. It's so powerful. It is the greatest transformer of our lives. So what happens is we live so often in the unconscious level, and things are sort of automatic pilot all day long. And out of habit, we just process at the emotional level. Something happens and we go into the emotional issues. Sometimes we're already full on into the emotionalizing before we realize, we're emotionalizing. It's a shadow. It's pulling our attention away from all that we are. And that's normal. I want you to understand that I'm not saying that anybody here who does that is something weird about them. Excuse me, we're normal. The goal is to keep stepping forward so that we notice that emotionalizing sooner and sooner, and before we get full on in and become the emotion. That's what happens in emotionalizing. We become the emotion. That's who we are. We aren't living out of the purity of the pure soul essence. We become the emotion. And thus the emotion is casting a very long shadow, has pulled us away completely from the focus, and not doing its big job that it can do to transform our outer reality. So what we want to do is we want to transform the shadows from within. First, we become aware of what's casting the shadow, and then we use the pure soul essence light, so simple, guys, to dissolve the shadow. Or doesn't mean it's going to dissolve the person who maybe is triggering off anxiety for you or whatever. You dissolve your attachment to that event, which it's the attachment that's being triggered, which causes that event, that person, whatever, to become the shadow. So that's what we do. What we want to do is become conscious that are what's casting the shadow. And then we want to move, once we become aware, we move into the center of the pure soul essence, and we literally use the energy of that pure soul essence to envelop the shadow. Is that easy or what? We want to simply... We're not going to destroy the shadow. It isn't about destruction. It's about transformation. And the transformation is ourselves. So we're dissolving, we are neutralizing, we're transforming our viewpoint or opinion or the way we are triggered by those people or events or situations or conditions, however you want to categorize it, whatever it is in the moment. It may not even be something triggered. It may be a philosophy that we've held on to. And once we become aware, oh my gosh, I've really locked in this philosophy. And maybe we become aware, there's just elements of the philosophy that isn't speaking to me in the same way that it used to. We become aware that, maybe there's more out there. And so if we just give it a thought, even a possibility that something we've locked into, that we hold on to, is actually holding us back in some way. It is become the boundary between where we are and the expansion that we are moving toward. It creates a block. So once we become aware, we are going to use that pure soul essence light to envelop the boundary, the shadow. However, whatever symbol that you'd like to use, you can use this pure soul essence light to do that. So if something is triggering fear, for example, in you, you send the light to envelop your pure soul essence light. Instead of emotionalizing fear, let's pull it into the pure soul essence and actually use that light to envelop the fear that we're carrying. It just is a powerful tool. Just utilize our focus of attention. We know how important that is. Pull it into our inner reality and allow us to transform our outer reality from within. Utilizing that pure soul essence light to do the transforming. And in this way, the more we do it, the more often we think of it, the more aware we become, the more connected we will be to that pure soul essence and all that it is, all that it can be, all that it is bringing to us in our lives and transforming us. Remember, we're not destroying anything. Even the fear, we can't destroy fear. We're destroying our attachment to fear related to whatever set that off. We're in the human kingdom. Emotions are part of our reality. We don't destroy the emotions and become automatons or robots. We just destroy. We just dissolve, disconnect, neutralize the attachment to that. So that when that event happens again, we have a choice. Do we choose to feel fear, or do we choose to feel curious, or do we choose to feel indifferent? Do we choose to feel whatever? We have choice. And that event, that emotion is no longer casting a shadow on us. Now, because I'm talking to those of you who are, many of you, not everyone, who are fifth dimensional, carrying the dual soul nature, I want you guys to be aware that the intensity of the connection of this power and the power of the miraculous is held at it's at a higher degree of intensity because we have the true soul essence as well. Okay, and this gives us, and it's great that we have a little bit of a leg up here. I appreciate it, although it seems difficult, of course, and it seems like, really, sometimes can we really get there? But actually, we do have a leg up, and in fact, we all carry sort of a ticket to freedom from the bondage that has been holding us in this state of basically shadow boxing. Because now you're carrying this at a conscious level. And we've already experienced the clearing of our shadows, the first go-around when we were true humans and we were moving up through the human kingdom and moved to graduate into that fifth dimensional realm. So we've already done it. So we already have the unremembered remembrance. And we know that we can draw from the inside the light of the pure soul essence to dissolve the shadows in our lifetime. And the higher selves have said often, and I don't know that I say this, but I really wish that I would say it a lot, because when I was reading the information, I discovered this statement, and I remember how much it meant to me when I first heard it. They say, there is no light at the end of the tunnel, that each of us is the light in the tunnel. That's exciting. That is significant. That is mind-boggling, brilliant. There is no end of the tunnel. Each of us are the light within the tunnel. We don't have to get anywhere to get to the light. We already are the light. We're the light that shines into the darkness. There isn't anything external to us that's going to take away the darkness of our lives. We will each take ourselves out of the darkness by shining our own light. We have to be willing to lay claim to our own power, to allow our own light to lead us from the inside out. I think intellectually, many of us, if not all of us, are certainly willing to do that. This isn't, often it's not about willing, but the conscious mind, the mind level, is different from at the soul level. The soul has all these issues, has all these shadows it's dealing with. And so there's a part of us that finds it difficult to be willing. But at the conscious mind level, I encourage you to own the power, to continue to help yourselves at the soul level remove one shadow after another, or dissolve the shadows, so that the soul level too is more than willing to own itself and lay claim to its own inner power. We're the light, guys, that are going to absorb. We carry the light that's going to absorb the demons of our mind. And I'm sure I've told you about the demons of the mind. They're just toxins. They're just things we believe that are no longer valid. I've told you about all that, I'm pretty sure. So I'm going to leave it at that. If somebody doesn't understand demons of the mind, it isn't actual demons. It's just toxins of the mind, like anxiety is a demon of the mind. False beliefs, demon of the mind. Limited truths, demons of the mind. Those kind of things. It's not evil. It's not bad. It's not like that. It's just a terminology of things that we don't want. We don't want things that we think, believe, carry from eons of misunderstandings. We don't want those to be operational. So we want to release them and neutralize them and then absorb that energy into our light. So, we are the light. We are going to be absorbing all the toxins, all the demons of the mind. We want to commit to that. We want to neutralize and dissolve the elements in our outer reality, in our everyday world, that cast the shadows, whatever they may be. And we will then go on to be the light to assist the humanities. Again, we're not going to do it for the humanities. We are not going to become the shadow in the light for any of the humanities. We will present information and opportunity and concepts, allow them to learn and grow, be supportive, but allow them to be free to follow their own path from within. So the higher selves are encouraging us to go within, to connect with that internal light as much as we can. Again, we have to live in this world and allow the power that we are to become a more permanent part of our fourth dimensional consciousness, our human mind. The more we commit and use the light and focus on the light and recognize when there's shadows in our light and go in to bring our own light to shine upon the shadows and dissolve them and open our way, the more the light will become a consistent place that we live out of in this world we are in. Okay? It will more consistently and more consciously be there. And it's one of the reasons that you've heard me say on a lot of shows, well, wow, I do it standing in the line somewhere. I do it, while the hot water is coming into the shower, while I'm unloading the dishes in the dishwasher, so that, any downtime, I move into the consciousness of that light. If there's something bothering me at the moment, that's when the light goes out to absorb it. It's very simple, and we're going to do a little bit of an exercise right now to help you focus on it. I've given you so many different ways you can use these divine lights, the divine light you carry. This is a very simple one. If you want to do something more complex, trust me, you can do whatever feels right at any particular moment, depending on where you are, the time you have, the issues at hand, etc., etc. So the exercise is literally going to give you all some time to just stand in your own light. Just some moments, and I want you, as I introduce this idea, I want you to think about what could be shadows in your light. You don't have to think of 10 or 50. Just think of 1 or 2, maybe 3 things that come up for you that might be shadows. Again, if, let's say it's a husband or a wife, let's say it's a situation at work or a spiritual group that you're a part of, that you think, is this a shadow? Again, it is not denigrating those people or that philosophy. It is simply that it is limiting you in your process, in your own light. Something or some philosophy that is a shadow for you may not be. It may be that moment of insight that first comes in for other people, and that it's presenting them concepts, ideas that they hadn't thought of before, and it is helping them move forward. They haven't yet locked into it, so it's acting as this inspiration and a stimulator. For you, it may not be anymore. So everything is neutral. There is no denigration, there's no condemnation on anything as being bad or evil. It's simply, how is it relating to you in your life? If it's casting a shadow, we want to move in to the pure soul essence light and allow that light to dissolve the shadow for us, our attachment to the shadow. The fact that we're in the process of allowing that shadow to be a shadow in our life. Okay? Now, this power of the pure soul essence, guys, I just want to be really clear, is not any power that can ever be corrupted. We do not need to have any kind of fear to laying claim to that power. It can't hurt or harm, can't trespass. It is only in the highest purity that it is working, okay? So at the fifth dimensional level, we carry that humanitarian purpose, remember, that desire to help the four lower kingdoms, the humanities maybe in particular, because they have a hard road to hoe in this free will kingdom, just as we do. So to accelerate their process of evolution, their evolutionary process. We've made that commitment by volunteering to return carrying the dual soul nature. So we have this desire at that true soul essence level. So not only do we have the equipment of the pure soul essence, but we have in a way, the advantage of the true soul essence, because we have a lot of unremembered remembrances. We have the unremembered remembrances of all that we have done before we returned in the fifth dimensional realm. We're also connected 24/7, moment-to-moment basis, not only with the pure soul essence, but also with our own fifth dimensional living beingness that's in the fifth dimension. Remember, just an aspect of ourselves was de-intensified down. We are connected at all times. We can tap into so much of that wisdom that we carry, so much of the knowledge, the conscious awareness. So we have a little bit of a leg up, even though sometimes it feels like we're, walking through molasses and we can barely get ourselves going here. I totally understand that, and that's okay. I'm just trying to say that there is a lot of help here that we're fortunate to have. And we are the pioneers. So we are being triggered, we are being impressed, we are being unconsciously moved. As long as we agree, they can never trespass. But there is this triggering to move us forward. So what I want you to do, basically, everybody, is you've had some moments, hopefully, to put together 1, 2, or 3 ideas of possible shadows in your own life. Okay. They can be big, little, it's not important. I just want you to become aware and experience the simplicity of what you can do for these shadows. Okay? Now, I'm going to actually use one as an example, use something as an example. But because I'm keeping it so simple, I am not going to activate the now moment. I'm not going to activate the forever now moment. We're literally just going to start with the pure soul essence, and that's what I'm asking you all to do, is whether you've got your eyes open or your eyes shut, I want you to focus on that symbolic sunlight within. I want you to feel the intense power that divine sunlight that we carry has. Just pulse it or sense it or imagine it to be pulsing that light in, through, and around the totality of who you are, in, through, and around the totality of your physical beingness, in, through, and around the totality of the mind of this life, and all of the etheric bodies you carry with you around your physical body at all time. And I want you to continue to expand it, to move in, through, and around the totality of your soul, the totality of your soul process. And now, in just those few moments, you're standing fully connected to your light. And I want you now to take that light. Imagine one of the shadows that you came up with a little bit earlier. You can use a symbol. You can just imagine the shadow in some way. If it's an emotion like fear or shame, you can just use the term. But I now want you to expand that light and move it in, through, and around the symbol that you're using as the shadow. Okay? I want you to take the light and fully encompass it, have it fully around, moving in, through, and around, and dissolving that shadow. It's dissolving the attachments that we have to the shadow, the belief systems, the misunderstandings, the misinterpretations, the habits, the thoughts, the emotional blueprints. It's dissolving all that is tied up with the allowing that thing, that person, that philosophy to be a shadow in our lives. The example I'd like to get is that you're driving along in your car and some driver comes whipping through, trying to beat the light, but basically running through the red light, almost hits you, and luckily it doesn't. You reacted fast enough, but it triggers this immense anger. How dare they? What do they think they're doing? This is an emotionalizing situation, and don't we become all caught up in emotionalizing that anger, that frustration, that just resentment and bitterness at that driver? How dare they? And we judge and we attack and we focus on that, and we get home and then we tell people about what happened, and this is us living and becoming the emotion. And I want everyone, because we've all gotten angry at drivers, to literally move that shadow into the light. Surround that shadow. Allow that event to lose its ability to be a shadow in our life, which means we're neutralizing the attachments that we have put on that event. The blame, the anger, the bitterness, the resentment, even the revenge, even rage, the anger that we are feeling, the emotions. And if you have any other emotions that come up, I want you to understand that you can throw all of those in as well. It doesn't have to be something I say. Throw in everything. The fear of, the sense of powerlessness, the sense of helplessness, the whole idea of being vulnerable to the shoe dropping or something hitting us out of left field. The total being unaware makes us feel helpless and vulnerable. I want all of those things to be thrown into that pure soul essence light. You don't have to name them even. You can literally just surround that kind of event with the light. The light knows what to do. The light knows what kind of attachments we have. But there's nothing wrong either with you simply, whatever you come up with, throwing it in there. There's nothing wrong with that either. But you don't have to do it. There's things known and unknown. We just want the light from within to dissolve the attachments, whatever we might have, for that kind of event. The unexpected, the life-threatening event, whether it's a car that almost hits it, having gone through a red light, hits us having gone through a red light, or any other kind of life-threatening event. And slowly but surely, you're expanding the light to encompass not just one specific example, but anything and everything that could cast that shadow, that could create those kind of emotions for us. In this way, you're expanding the dissolving of the shadows in your light. You're moving it from one example to the many, to the general. And just keep doing that. Remember, claim the power. Claim and own the power of your pure soul essence. You are the power of the miraculous. When we claim the power, there'll be no stopping us. You can continue to use the light to encompass any other shadow that you have thought of or have want to bring into the light. There are many possible shadows, and it would be very interesting to have people write me and suggest, or not suggest, but to share some of the shadows that came up for them, because this is a process of becoming aware of shadows and how they operate in our life. How is it that we hold back our own unfoldment, our own connection from healing from within? A lot of it, the first step is always the awareness. So I would love to have anybody email me with ideas that came up for them as you're doing this process during your day. I would love that. Again, it's Janet@higherselfvoice.com. Let me know and I'll share it on air. And trust me, if it's something that you found interesting and insightful for you in your own life, others will be able to relate to it. So much of what we carry, everybody carries. Different details, different degrees, plays out in different ways because we're all snowflakes, but we all are part and all have the human condition. We've all shared so many similar types. There's virtually, the higher selves tell us, there's virtually no new events. They're just events that are replaying over and over and over again. They might have new details, and we think they're new, but in essence, the essence of them is not new. For a long time in the world, many lives we've traveled, there were no cars. So we might think, well, road rage, okay. We haven't had cars in so many lives. So isn't this a new event if this is the first life we've been in where there were cars? Well, no, because the essence of the event is something coming out of left field, being life-threatening and generating the tremendous fear and then rage, whatever. Those kind of events we've experienced in virtually every life and multiple times in every life. So, no, there is no new event. The details may be unique, but not the essence of the event. Okay, just one sec. As I close down this pre-tape show, I want you all to just commit to yourself. Again, I keep encouraging you. Commit to the self. Commit to becoming connected to your pure soul essence. And at the end of each of these shows, I'll say, if you do nothing else, and I recall that I said this for the Higher Heart Consciousness show, the desire of the show that was about the innate desire to love and be loved, and I talked about the importance. I say at the end of the show, if you don't do anything else but this, you're going to tremendously help yourselves. Well, let me tell you, that's what the higher selves used to say to us. We have so much ability, so many avenues, so many techniques that we can utilize to move and unfold in accelerated ways to bring in the joy and the balance and the health and the healing and the outer realities that we so want. We have so many techniques that we can use. So it sounds a little confusing when I say that, because I'm going to say, if you do nothing else and you just resonate with this process, and this is what you do several times a day, several times a week, you are going to greatly accelerate and help yourselves move and become and live out of this inner reality, the true soul essence, the true pure soul essence that you are. You're going to be living out of that within this fourth dimensional human realm that we all are in. And the more we do that, the better our lives will become. The quicker our lives will unfold in this way. And we'll be more and more and more and more in touch with the purity of who we are, more able to own it, to accept it, to utilize it in its clarity. So the higher selves are indicating that the exercise is done. It's very simple. I explained a few things. I took longer, but you can do it for just, a minute, 30 seconds, a minute and a half. I do it at the gym when I'm on the elliptical. I'm utilizing, and I do different exercises. I haven't stuck on one because as I talk about one, or I know I'm going to talk on one, I will utilize it over and over again so that I have some experience with it and feel comfortable with it and allow it to make sense to me. So it's not just words, but I'm experiencing it before I share it with you all. So I do shift around, but you don't have to. If you think, oh, this is just whatever, and you might not resonate with it as much as the one on the higher heart consciousness, use the higher heart consciousness one. They all work, they're all divine, they all work in our highest ideal. They're all going to help accelerate our movement forward. All of them. So the higher selves just encourage, as always, that we make the commitment to ourselves and that we start to claim all that we are inside. Again, there isn't a light at the end of the tunnel. We are the light. We are always the light in the tunnel. And the more we use the light, the less of a tunnel it will be, in fact. We will become that light and operate out of that lighted place all the time. Okay, so with that, I'm going to say goodbye for this week.